welcome back to the Director's Garage. I am your host and resident idiot, Michael. It's baseball season, folks. Got a big show today. We're going to do a deep dive into two brand spanking new headphones. They look something like this from Beyerdynamic. This is the DT-700 Pro and the DT-900 Pro, both unboxed just a few weeks ago. Now, mind you, they're not just Pro headphones, but Pro X headphones with some sort of X factor of a professional variety, or so they say. Come on. But first, I'm gonna tell you about a famed producer you may have heard about, or hopefully at least heard his name before. Now, a few episodes back, I auditioned tracks by the Mamas and the Papas. And in the making of that episode, I started doing some digging, because I have this tendency, or maybe it's a sickness, that whenever I feature an artist, I start wondering, how did this record get made? How did this group come to be? These are original pressings, folks. This is old school.
Well, this is me, Dixie.
And today I'm going to talk about the guy who shaped the Mamas and the Papas, and that's a legendary producer named Lou Adler. Now, Lou is a guy we all should know about. He was born in Chicago, raised in Los Angeles, and he got his start by teaming up with a guy named Herb Alpert. Yeah, the Tijuana brass trumpeter. But before Herb's career as a performer, and they both started as managers. And one of their very first acts were Jan and Dean. Now, Jan and Dean came to fame singing about Surf City and Dead Man's Curve. That is before Jan himself wrecked his Corvette in 1966, not far from the deadly Hollywood turn. It's an accident that unfortunately basically ended their careers. Now, Lou and Herb also wrote a song for the great Sam Cooke. The track, Wonderful World. Don't know much about history. What a great opening line. Lou and Herb parted ways, and Alpert started his performing career, while Lou, he founded a record label called DUNHILL. Now, his first big signing was the Mamas and the Papas, and Adler produced all of their big hits, including Monday, Monday, California Dreamin'. And at DUNHILL, Lou also produced Barry McGuire's hit, Eve of Destruction. What a song. But Lou is one of these guys that can't sit still. Adler produces the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967. He makes a documentary about it, which gave us this historic moment where Jimi Hendrix lights his Stratocaster on fire with lighter fluid, along with the line, "I'm gonna sacrifice something I really love," in front of a stoned-out crowd that included Mama Cass and Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees. Also toured with Hendrix, by the way. It's also where The Who performed one of their greatest sets, punctuated by the destruction of all their instruments just before Hendrix hit the stage. There's a little one-upsmanship there. Now, are you still with me? Because his label DUNHILL, meantime, is smoking hot, so he sells it to ABC and immediately starts a new label called Ode Records. He signs, get this, Carole King, and he produces her Tapestry record. This, folks, is one of the greatest albums in music history. It wins 2 Grammy Awards. He also signs Spirit. Their big hit was I Got a Line on You. And he signs Cheech and Chong, producing all of their iconic comedy albums. So, is that enough? Not a chance. He teams up with Robert Altman and produces his 1970 comedy, Brewster McCloud. And he also directs Cheech and Chong's Up in Smoke. Then, and here's the turn I love, he produces the Rocky Horror Picture Show, the movie that made stars out of Tim Curry and launched the career of Meatloaf. You knew it was going to come around to someone we've talked about before on this show. All this stuff is connected, folks. You just got to find the through lines. Lou is still around, by the way. He's 88 years old, but that's your story for today. So, let's start digging into these two new Beyers. What do you say? I'm going to start today with a talk about a flaw in the director's garage. Yeah, I'm going to call my own self out for my own blind unboxings, because here's where this format falls a little short. When I first opened the DT-700 and DT-900, I really wasn't aware of what they were. I thought, oh, these are some near entry-level products from Beyerdynamic, and I've seen this design before. Let's just check them out. But here's the flaw. These folks are brand new releases. Very few people have their hands on these yet. I just didn't know it because there's just too much product. I can't know everything about every headphone. So these headphones are actually pretty special, and I just failed to recognize it when I opened the boxes. They are likely going to be headphones that a lot of musicians and recording engineers are going for when they are monitoring their mixes. Now, very few people have actually heard these to this point, so this review today is going to have a little more weight to it, knowing that when people go to buy a pair of headphones for mixing, it's usually like AKG, Beyer, Audio-Technica. Those are the brands that usually come to mind first for small project studios, right? Well, both of these headphones are going to do quite well at sales, I predict. But should they? Now, of course, these headphones were sent to me from our fine friends at Audio 46, folks. They're your personal audio superstore. They have the best brands, the best products. They just got in a new shipment of RME ADI2 DACs. That's a device I'd love to try out. It's got one of the best EQ schemes in the industry. Chord's Toby, the killer 100-watt solid-state amp that pairs brilliantly with their TT2 and M scaler. The Meze Advar, an IEM I'd love to check out. Audio 46 has it all. They ship fast and free, and if you use the coupon code Director's Garage, all one word at checkout, you can save an extra 5% on most of the items they carry. They truly are the best place to go when you want that next level of endgame. So these two headphones we're looking at today, the DT-700 Pro X and the DT-900 Pro X, they're kind of middle of the pack for Beyer's lineups. And frankly, Beyer is one of those companies that just kind of suffers from model-itis. There's simply too many different models to choose from. There's open backs and closed back offerings at price points that are just $100 apart. And each of these are just shy of like $300. You probably find them for around $250 once they've been on the market for a minute. So let's start today's sound check with Ergonomics.
Go.
Good catch, right? Now, both of these headphones share the same basic steel skeleton, and they provide a good spring and clamp. There's a good bit of tension on these, but I think you could probably bend these out a little bit to your will and your comfort level. I didn't try it because I do have to return them. The pads on these are pretty good. They're warm and fuzzy, and who doesn't like a warm and fuzzy, you know? Good bit of padding on them too. They're serviceable, but I kind of prefer the feel of a leather pad. And if you're in a situation where the room is a little bit warmer than you'd like, yeah, these are going to soak up your sweat. Kind of gross. Something to consider anyway. Not that I sweat, I perspire, people. Sorry. Now the cups, they're not that big, and my ears are just a tick short of a Dumbo size, so I do feel a little bit crammed in these, and I kind of prefer more of a classic oval to the round of these two DTs. But that said, I would put these in sort of that HD 650 comfort range. I think that's fair. It's similar, though not an exact experience. Now the cables, you get two lengths in the box, but they're both single-sided feeds. They come out of the left cup, and the orientation is straight down, which means I do get some occasional contact with my shoulder. Not the best, not the worst. Now, the cups, they are plastic, and any brushing against them reminds you that they're on your head. The microphonics are a bit high on these. Even brushing the cable, these aren't perfectly quiet. So let's start getting into the sound, and the sound on both of these headphones comes courtesy of this, a Stellar 45 dynamic driver, which they call a sound transducer. But folks, Yeah, it's a dynamic driver, so what's so stellar about it? Well, they claim an innovative membrane structure controls the axial motion of the voice coil. All right, whatever the hell that means, right? But for the sake of this review, I'm going to start with imaging because that's my favorite part about the Stellar 45. Now, both of these headphones have decent images that are locked nicely in place. They aren't as precise as some of my other headphones, granted, but they do convey that sense of location of the sound in a pretty good way. You have a good sense of 2D space. But it's the 3D space where these headphones kind of struggle a bit. And the SOUNDSTAGE is a real weak spot on the DT-700, the closeback. Things are just really tight. The sound is in your face, and things stay very much on an even plane all the way around your head, and they don't waver much. Now, if your intent is to mix, most of the time you're interested in the sonic qualities of a given frequency range. So SOUNDSTAGE really usually isn't a consideration in that mixing process. So I would take that SOUNDSTAGE observation with a grain of salt, or a grain of alcohol if you prefer. Now, by contrast, the DT-900 is a considerably more open situation. It is, an open back after all. I don't get an expansive soundstage out of this either, but the music is allowed to breathe a bit. It gives the DT-900 a more pleasing sensation, but they are by no means wide in presentation. So let's talk speed, and both of these headphones are frankly a little slow and they're prone to some congestion. I wouldn't expect the fastest experience ever at this price point, and both of these headphones kind of suffer when the music gets really complex. And there's a lot of different timbres and instruments getting supplied all at once. The music kind of jumbles up and gets a bit globby, but most of the time under normal listening, you're going to be fine. But when things get complex, their lack of speed kind of shows itself. The DT-900, even though it's the same driver, comes across a little faster because you don't have that back wave over the main wave to the ear. The effect is that things sound less congested, and a greater perception of speed is had on the DT-900. As for detail, these are mediocre. They're better on the top end than the low, I'll say that, and there's a reasonable crispness to those upper frequencies. They're not completely muddy. They're competent, but they're not particularly remarkable either. I'll say that. Neither headphone reveals any sort of new ground or experience like you're peering particularly deep into the music in some remarkable new way. No. But when we talk dynamics, this is a category where the DT-700 actually has a little bit of an advantage thanks to the closeback design. Remember, on these dynamic drivers, on all headphones for that matter, the diaphragm is going to produce a wave that goes this way towards your ear. It's also going to produce a counter wave that goes back this way, that hits the outer wall of the cup and folds back over the inner wave. Now, that back wave provides an extra bit of punch on a closeback headphone. It does come at the sacrifice of breathability to the music, but if you're into slammy slam slam, this is a case for the DT-700 Pro X, though it doesn't slam in the same way that, say, Hi-Fi Man's new HE-R9 does, albeit that headphone's twice the price. And all this is going to lead us into sound structure, and of course we're going to be talking about bass and mids and treble, and let's do it in that order for a change. What do you say? Yeah! Stupid, okay. Now the DT-700 does have a surprising amount of bass for a lower priced headphone. It doesn't extend deep into the sub, but there is good bass presence here. It just kind of blooms a little bit, and it gets a little bit muddled here and there. At least there is a bit of slam on this thing that is less prominent, certainly on the DT-900, but while the DT-700 provides a bit more quantity of bass, the DT-900 has a better quality of bass. The DT-900 gives the bass better texture, and all of this comes back to, again, that back wave off the cup. Allowing the back wave to escape through the vents, it provides a much better experience because the closed back isn't doing a very good job of managing that back wave back toward your ear. Yeah, it's boosting the presence, but it's not maintaining detail. It kind of gunks up the bass a bit, whereas the DT-900 Pro X stays a little bit better sorted down low. Now, when we get to mids, both of these headphones, I think, are mid-flat to slightly mid-forward. The 900, I think, does a better job overall here because of the lack of the back wave sort of reinforcing the sound, punching it a bit. But both of these are pretty good for hearing and setting vocals into the mix. I don't think either of these are peaky or honky, and frankly, the mids feel just about right, which is a redeeming quality, especially when I believe these headphones are both going to get used for mixing in smaller project studios. Now up top, there's a slight bit of brightness happening here, maybe a little treble emphasis, but it's not annoying or harsh. I would say there's a slight bump that gets a little bit peaky on occasion. Generally though, the treble is decent enough, but there's not exactly anything special going on up top either. Now, in the music section today, I'm going to talk about an instance where I think these headphones really succeed, and I'm going to give you an example of where I think they fall apart. Now, first is the success story, and I'm going to call your attention to Prince's landmark album, Around the World in a Day, the modernized psychedelic record from 1985. This was the follow-up to Prince's chart-topping mega album, Purple Rain. Way less radio friendly, but I think entirely more rewarding. To be fair, Tidal's write-up called this record creepy. Maybe that says more about me than it does about Prince. It drew comparisons to Sgt. Pepper at the time. I think because of its, experimentation and its vision. I don't think this is as melodic as Pepper was, but I do think this is just a brilliant and visionary record in just about every way. There are tons of catchy riffs, and there's gorgeous soul in it. There's surprises all over the place. It showed off so much of Prince's brilliance, and it still produced two hit singles came off this record. I just love everything about this one, and Prince's voice is set back in the pocket. He can go, a little bit nasally sometimes with his vocals, but here he's set beautifully back into the mix. He doesn't ever get grating on the DTs, and where the DTs excel is with the image, and this is an image and soundstage album. There's never too much going on to confuse the DTs. I think it's a perfect album for the DT-700, and even more so on the DT-900 Pro X. And that leaves the bad one, and the album I'm going to talk about is Mumford & Sons Babel. It's big, booming music that's very dense with a big soundstage on the right rig. And on the DT Pro X's, it's a complete mess, particularly on the 700s. Marcus's vocals go uncomfortably bright and forward. The slower speed of the stellar 45 driver is, less than stellar here. The instruments, they glob up into a wall of noise, and the space is all up in your face. The bass, it thumps out strong on the title track, but it's booming over the finer details of the instrumentation. Neither of these two headphones handle the complexities and the denseness of Mumford. The quieter passages are handled much better, to be fair, but the second the songs ramp up, things fall apart really quick. It's an album that shows off just about every weakness in these DTs. So let's begin to bring all of this home. Let's get some sanity back in the room. I do confess that I prefer the DT-900 open back over the DT-700 closed back. I think that the back wave issues on this headphone are just too great for any amount of additional bass presence or slam to overcome. I think that both of these headphones show decent mids and a reasonable treble, even if they are a little bit bright here and there. But I don't think that either of these headphones are particularly remarkable either. And that's going to lead me to my conclusion of this comparison. Uninspired. Both of these headphones do a reasonable job of delivering a relatively flat representation of the signal that's being sent to them. And for that, I suppose I could say I could do some mixing on them. And that's kind of where I believe Beyer is positioning these two new products. On their website, both of these headphones are listed under the Studio and Creator tab. just to drive home the Pro of the Pro X models. But in the end, I'm walking away from these two products uninspired by the experience. I never really felt like track seeking. Neither took me to that place of, oh, I wonder what this track sounds like, or drove me to find something that worked particularly well with them. Yes, the 900 is to my ears the better of the two, but I don't think either of these two headphones will make anyone's top anything list. They work as intended, but they don't leave a remarkable impact on anything in particular. There are plenty of options at this price point, and I don't see these jumping to the head of the pack. They're middle tier, lower priced headphones that stay stuck in the middle in just about every way. So that's the new Beyerdynamic DT-700 Pro X and DT-900 Pro X. Two middleweight headphones that are kind of stuck in the middle of a pretty crowded field. They're not bad products. You won't go wrong picking any of these up, but they're not particularly remarkable products either, at least to my ears. And I want to steer you toward products that are remarkable and extraordinary. I just don't hear it in these two. Now, next up, I'm going to break open that second box that came with the R9 the other day. It's a headphone that I think you're going to find extraordinary. I hope it is. Make sure you're subscribed to the Director's Garage so you don't miss a thing. It's going to be worth checking out, I think. So thanks for stopping by today and giving me a few minutes of your day. Give this episode a thumbs up if you enjoyed my look at the DT-900 and the DT-700 Pro X's, or you can do the other thing if you think I totally sucked eggs. I can't say I blame you either way, but I'll see you before you know it.